It's got a 7-slot grille, military roots, and it kind of looks like a Jeep Gladiator. On this inside line, I'm going back in time with a 2009 Hummer H3T. So with the all-new Hummer EV now out, we decided maybe we should go back in time and check out the last pickup truck ever produced by Hummer, and that is the H3T. Only produced for 2 years, the H3T was so ahead of its times, it wasn't even funny. The fact that you could get these from the factory with a 5.3 liter V8, front and rear selectable lockers and real off-road appointments, and a 285, which was basically a 33-inch tall tire, was pretty amazing. This is a 2009, and the way I would equate to the trim level of it, it's sort of like a sport for a Jeep Gladiator. It's got cloth seats, factory inline 5, which is a pretty torquey engine, not super powerful for the highway, not a great passing vehicle, but given that it comes with 456 gears from the factory, it's not terrible. It does not have the Adventure package, which, if you're not familiar with these things, the Adventure package gave you real rock sliders, good skid plates underneath, and front and rear selectable lockers. Those are sort of the main attributes. It sort of is that grandfather to the Gladiator. Great body on frame construction, really cool domestic truck. It's just right truck at the wrong time. So let's dive a little bit more into the H3T, what makes these things so cool, and how this one's modified, and why it's a pretty good fit if you're looking for one of these unicorns and if you want to build one. The first substantial modification that was done to this Hummer was swapping out the factory tires and wheels. Now, this is a 35 by 1250 knitted ridge grappler, and it is wrapped on a 17 by 9 centerline wheel. Now, this wheel has around 4.5 inches of back spacing with a -12 offset. The concept here was sort of going after that Gladiator 35s and no lift, and while you can do that, it rubs as soon as you go off-road or if you turn it all the way on the back of the front fender flare. So there's a few solutions that you can do. Now, the easy one, which is what this owner went with, was to go with a simple leveling kit. He picked up a rough country kit, low range 4x4, installed it. I went there to document it, and basically what it is a spacer that goes between the torsion bar bolt and the actual torsion bar key. That's what gives it pressure for the torsion bars to sort of rotate up and raise the front end. In addition to that, there is a small strut spacer that goes on top of the factory strut. I will say, I think long term, a differential drop is probably a good investment, along with a more heavy-duty set of rod ends. The Hummer lineup for the H3Ts were all-wheel drive, and unfortunately, I mean, you have power going to that front diff all the time, and not only does that kind of hurt your fuel economy, but you know it'll give you more front end vibration, or if your axle shafts aren't right, you're going to have some issue there. Overall, I've driven these things stock. They're very comfortable stock, surprisingly. I mean, it's a spring under rear, torsion bar front. I am not a fan of torsion bar suspensions, but these things always rode really nice in factory configuration. With the torsion bars essentially turned up, it's definitely firmer in the front. It's livable. It's definitely fine on the highway. I would say if you're thinking about doing it, the one thing to consider, especially if you really want to go off-road a lot, is you're essentially losing down travel. And what happens is when you're off-road, you're basically topping out the suspension that you have, and you'll hear it and feel that thud of you sort of running out of down travel for the front suspension. The bummer is there's not a ton of aftermarket support for these things. You don't really have a ton of options if you want to turn the front end up and level these things out. The ridge grapplers were picked because they're such a competent on and off-road tire. It's aggressive enough that it really works well, especially here in the Southeast, that you don't really have to have a mud terrain, especially for the type of wheeling this thing's going to do. But it's just about to that category in terms of how well it works off-road, but it's not very loud on the highway. It's got good sight, so it tends to stick very well. And here where it rains a lot, that's super important. It's fine on the highway. It's done 70 miles an hour in overdrive. I thought that was pretty impressive. Around town power feels pretty good with the inline 5. I remember testing these years ago when I was still doing magazine editing stuff, and it was interesting to sort of see how kind of underwhelming the V8 Alpha one. I kind of think we all thought, oh man, it's gonna have a V8, it's gonna be super fast. It really wasn't a blow you away type vehicle, and the inline 5 really isn't that bad. It's just a pretty good adequate engine for this platform. Now, one thing that's definitely worth talking about is the bed on this thing. Now, it's sort of a composite bed, and one of the strangest things that I've seen, and it seems to be a common issue, is the plastic liners that come with these things from the factory will bubble up if they haven't had some sort of cover or something on it. This one, I believe, used to have some sort of like camper shell in the back. It's got a fold-up bed cover on it now, but I think that's what's really helped protect the actual liner from kind of going up. It's got some neat stuff to it. It does have kind of this like trail rail system, if you will, that runs around it. I think it's a 58.8 inch bed length. This is a Sur-Ron electric dirt bike, and it fits in here diagonally. I just was kind of curious to see how well and how easy it fit in here. It does really well. The little side storage things are kind of, I don't know what you'd put in there. They're so small, it seems a little worthless. This one does have the little optional lock box that goes onto the rail system. It's pretty handy. It seems to be big enough that you can actually put tools and things like that in it. I get what they were trying to do with the sort of plastic inserts and the little storage cubbies and stuff, but I just don't see how effective they really are. So the inside of this, in my opinion, is dated, but it's still pretty nice. I like that it's very simple. The dash and all the gauges, there's nothing, too high-zoot about it. Yeah, it looks dated by, especially the new Hummer standards, but in general, I don't think it's that bad. Now, this one is fit with cloth seats, and I'm blown away with how good a condition they are in, given the age of this vehicle and the fact that it's got over 100,000 miles on it. I have seen other versions of H3s and H3Ts with leather, and they definitely haven't held up as well as these cloth seats. I'm a fan of cloth seats. It's going to be a personal thing, I'm sure, for a lot of people, but not bad. Again, this is more of a base model one. Some of the higher trims have a little bit nicer stitching and all that good jazz, but I think they did a really good job. I think for the time being, equivalent of a sport Gladiator, this is kind of what you would have gotten. It's not bad. One thing I will say, if you are looking at one and it has a sunroof, be aware these things are notorious for having leaks. And it's not so much around the top. What ends up happening is it has 2 drain hoses in the front and 2 drain hoses in the back. Essentially, the drain hose end gets clogged up. You've got the two at the firewall and 2 at the rear of the cab. Do a quick Google search, you'll see what you have to do. Clean them out. It's really not hard. You got to use a plastic trim tool, pop off the trim pieces that are in your way, lean the rear seats forward. It doesn't take long, but that is a common issue. If you're curious if yours has it, you'll know because the floor mats will be really wet. That's kind of a dead giveaway. Yes, you can get these without a sunroof, and that's what I would personally do. The other complaint in terms of interior overall, these are tiny windows. It's always been a complaint. It's a high belt line. It feels small on the inside, and I'm not a huge guy. I remember testing these back in the day, and some of the taller test drivers and judges in our test really complained that they felt cramped in it. Well, hopefully we shed a little light and excitement on the H3T. While it is going to be a far cry from what the new Hummer is, I think these are really cool alternatives for anybody that's looking for a quad cab body on frame truck. Now, I wouldn't get this with the intention of straight axling it or anything like that. The aftermarket is just too limited, and there's just some complexity with this vehicle that would make it very difficult and expensive to go down that road. That being said, I wouldn't be afraid to get one and do exactly what you see here. It's not an expensive vehicle to get into, and it's not an expensive vehicle to modify. You know, the lift kit for this thing was, I think, less than $100. The you know, tires and wheels, pretty affordable. That's your really biggest aftermarket investment. And beyond that, it already looks great. I mean, 35s with a leveling kit. It's really a cool vehicle, so ahead of its time. What a bummer this thing was only around for 2 years, but maybe in the future, something like this, it's more affordable, will come down the line out of the Hummer camp. I guess the greatest evolution of what we really saw out of this was the Chevy Colorado ZR2, the modern one. But either way, we thought it was worth checking out. It seems like the Ford Bronco is going to be having their own version of something like this. It's going to be coming. IFS front, solid axle rear. Again, what a cool truck ahead of its time. And we really like the fact that they continued their door all the way down. Yes, that is a little diss at Jeep, but we hope you like these videos. We've got some cool stuff coming all across the channel, more driver battles. We've got some really cool adventure videos coming, and so please like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. You can always find me at Ali Mansour Editor on Instagram, and we hope to see you guys on the trail soon. Bye bye.